It's just me. No one else is here. But that's okay. Hope you all are well. Hello, hello. What's shaking bacon? Anything interesting? It's time to make coffee. In desperate need of coffee. But what do I want it to be? Do I want Nutella coffee? Kinda, right? Kinda. I'm gonna make Nutella coffee because I'm a grown-up and no one can stop me. Stop me, Smee, don't stop me. Stop me, Smee, stop me. Don't stop me, Smee. Anyone else a huge Hook fan? No one's even in here yet. I don't know what I'm talking about. Who am I talking to? Hi, Nikki. Who am I talking to? It's just Nikki and me. Boop. That is the situation. Hey, Jen. How's it going? Hey, Mary. How's it going? How's everyone doing? Feeling good? Feeling fine? Let's make our coffee, then we'll read, we'll have a great time. Hey, Nikki. It's going to be fantastic. You know, whatever. I'm tired enough that I'll just take it all. It is a gloomy day. Okay, how's it going? How's everyone doing now that the machine is off and we can actually talk to one another? Anyone doing it? If the new Percy Jackson series is out today, so that's exciting. You know, I'm going to tell you something. I have never seen nor read anything from the Percy Jackson series, Morning Liz, but I kind of want to. Can we see your Nespresso maker and weird, but I'm curious about your setup? Sure. Yeah, of course. Not a problem. Hold on. That's not weird at all. Flip. Okay. So, got the Nespresso maker and the little frother, and then the pods are here. I think I would too. No, it's not huge at all. I mean, like, if you look, this is my hand. You know, it's not the smallest one they have, but it's also not the largest. I guess it would be considered like a medium one. Yeah, it's a great machine. I live on it. As a new parent, we wouldn't survive without the Nespresso machine, and that's a fact. That's a straight up fact. My husband and I would not be alive today without it. I don't know. I don't know if there's a huge difference. My mom has a very small one. She has like the single size one because she takes it on the road with her. Can't stay long. I'm going to volunteer at the school. Oh, what are you guys doing? Tell us everything. Tell us everything. Tell B we said hi. I wanted to ask you guys a question. Now I'm forgetting what my question was. But you have to take Moosey's separate. Oh, that's right, about the book. So I saw that Lin-Manuel Miranda, who you all know that I love, is in the series as Hermes, which is very cool to me. So that's part of what I want. A Coco cart for the teachers. Oh, Liz, that is precious. Liz, that is so cool. That is so great. I love that you're doing that. That's really fantastic, Liz. I hope you have a fantastic time doing that. That is such a great thing to do. I will tell you that when I was a teacher, I still ate sugar and no one made us a Cocoa cart. So now I'm jealous. Now I'm jealous. So part of me is like, should we read one of the Percy Jackson books in book club and see if we like it? Like that? Like next year? Obviously we can't do it right now. But maybe next year after we finish Tale of Magic? I don't know. I'm not against it. I've never read any of them, so like it'd be new to me. It could be fun. Maybe we'll read the rest of Tale of Magic. So we're going to finish my book, read the rest of Tale of Magic. Maybe we'll do the Emily Wilde book, and then we'll do Percy Jackson. What do you guys think? Because I really do want to read that Emily Wilde book. Yeah, me either, Jillian. It'd be brand new to me. But we can read one and see how everyone feels. And if it doesn't flow for book club, you know, it's been years since I've read it. So yeah. So I think that sounds like a nice thing. So in case anyone doesn't remember, that Emily Wilde book that Liz suggested that I bought is like Emily Wilde's Guide to Fairy Tales or something like that, which seems like it's like right up our alley, you know? So I don't want to skip that because I actually purchased the physical book for that. So I do want to read it. Although if you guys don't end up liking it, I can always read it on my own, of course. Like we don't have to read everything together, although it is kind of fun to have buddies to read stuff with. I don't know, there's something about reading things with people, right? Am I crazy? That like makes it a little bit better even because you have someone to talk to, you know? Morning, Isabella. Like I'm always reading something on my own also. And I've been reading this book by an author I love. I love this author, by the way. Oh, thank you. My husband bought this sweater for me 2 years ago for Christmas, I want to say. I don't remember. You might be crazy, but not about that. Yeah, right, totally. Knowing your sleep meter is like -5, you look great. Oh, thank you. I think it's all fake. I don't know. The camera it does me wonders, apparently, because I feel dead to the world. She woke up 7 times last night, you guys. 7 times. So that's where we're at sleep-wise. I love conversations when we're reading together. So I'm reading a book. You guys know the author Emily Henry? I love her, generally speaking. I do need the coffee. Yeah, I definitely need the coffee. Emily, let's try that one more time. Emily Henry is a great author. I genuinely love almost all of her stuff. The first couple of things I read by her, I devoured those books, you guys. Like, finished them in a day kind of reading, right? Love her work. I think she writes the kind of rom-coms I want to read, right? So for me, Emily Henry, A+, right? But I got her newest book, Great Big Beautiful Life, and it's dragging for me. It's taking me I've been reading it for 2 months. And granted, I'm a sleepless mom, no question. But like, I've read another book while I had my baby already. And it's just, there's just something about this one. Like, so here's the thing. Has anyone read Great Big Beautiful Life or planning to? Because I don't want to give any spoilers well, I guess this isn't really even a spoiler. This isn't even a spoiler. So the setup of her book, Great Big Beautiful Life, morning Brittany, is that there are 2 kind of things that you're reading at the same time. One is you're reading the story of this girl, Alice, and her life as she is researching another person's life and talking to this person to write a biography for them. Okay, because she's a writer. So she's writing this biography at the same time as you're getting her life also. So sometimes you're reading a chapter that's about Alice, and sometimes you're reading a chapter that Alice has written about this other woman who's like 80-something, right? Who lived a great extravagant life because she's from a very wealthy, multi-generational American family, blah, 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 right? In media, like a newspaper family. So what I have found in this book is that I like the chapters that she's writing about that character more than I like the chapters that are about the main character. So I think that's why it's dragging for me, because I think that the chapters she's writing are more interesting than the chapters about her. So I'm struggling with it for that reason. Not everyone feels that way, I'm sure. You know, it was a bestseller, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, that's my perspective on the book. I don't know if anyone else is planning to read it. But you know, everyone, that's why we have so many authors and so many genres and styles, because everyone is entitled to their own style, if you will. But like I said, the thing that's weird about it for me is that generally speaking, Emily Henry is my style, you know? And I feel like she like veered off course with this one. The other thing, does anyone read Ali Hazelwood? I also really love Ali Hazelwood, and I read everything that she writes pretty much, from her shorter books to her full novels, etc. and so on. And her most recent also missed the mark for me. Like, so her most recent one was called A Problematic Summer Romance, I think, or something like that. And I forgot halfway through the book that it was even an Ali Hazelwood book, because it felt so different than all her other books. Like, that's how off it was for me, that I was like, who wrote this again? And I had to like remind myself that she wrote it. Is that weird? Not that you have to write everything that sounds the same, but usually an author has a voice and a style. And that's what gets you fans, right? Is your style, if you will. Am I wrong? Am I off base? I don't know. Maybe I'm just babbling because I haven't slept, which is totally possible. But anyway, we'll get to reading, and we'll decide on the Percy Jackson thing later. Hey, Naisa. So we are about to read about the wishing boats. Why can't I speak? Probably because I don't sleep. All right, the wishing boats from Edward's perspective. I have not read them. You haven't read the Percy Jackson series? Me either. Yeah, it's brand new to me. I haven't read it at all. I haven't read any of it. I haven't seen any of the films, any of the TV shows, nothing. Zero, zilch. So it would be a brand new venture in that regard. Okay. The wishing boats. Edward. People were lined up at the water's edge for what felt like miles in either direction, and though Edward knew this was an exaggeration, his mind was playing tricks on him as he watched them from afar. How many people came to the White Lockian wishing boats event? Now that he thought of it, he'd never really considered the number. He just assumed that everyone showed up with their boats and wishes in tow, right? It's like when your favorite band gets big, a song that doesn't sound like them. Right. That's exactly what it's like, Jen. Yes. Yes. Good comparison. Yes. From where Edward stood now on the bow of one of the fishing boats, he could see that everyone had indeed brought a little boat with them. Some people brought two. He couldn't hear the crowd over the music playing all around him, but he could see smiles, and they all looked excited, and that made him feel excited. You ready, man? One of the younger fishermen named Jonah asked him. After Mighty left the dock earlier that afternoon, Edward had stayed to speak to the gentleman who worked there. How much would it cost to play a bit of music from one of the speakers on your boats out in the harbor for the wishing boat celebration? He asked once Mikey was out of earshot. Wishing boats? Two guys asked at the same time, pulling the ropes that tied their vessels to the dock. Ever surprised that a town like this, with this much water, didn't have such a celebration, Edward explained what the wishing boats were to the fishermen. Being the salty sea type that spent more time on boats than off, they loved this. The kids come out and make boat wishes? That's cute as fuck. Dude, one guy smacked the other who had just cursed. You can't just drop an F-bomb in front of actual royalty. Edward laughed quietly under his breath and waved it off. I assure you it's quite all right. Being a prince does not mean I've not heard or used that kind of language. He gave the guys a wink to let them know that they were way more than off the hook on that front. Now listen, I'll pay you for your time, but I'm going to need one more favor beyond providing music for the festivities. Well, lay it on me, the one who swore said. I need to be able to make a speech from one of the boats, but I need to be heard by the people on land, just like the music. No problem, boss, the other said. We got a plenty good sound system. This is how Edward found himself with a microphone in hand, more nervous than he expected to be as he tapped on it to make sure the thing was on. The machine made that iconic squeaking sound that even to Edward sounded like it came from an 80s movie rather than this moment in present day. Good evening, Astoria, he called out, and that was met with wild cheers from everyone on the shore. Thank you all for coming to the first annual Astorian Wishing Boat celebration. If you were with us for the Umbrella Parade earlier this week, you know how important traditions and gatherings are to the people of Whitelock. People cheered. People cheered. For him. He kept his face even, not showing the surprise that he was feeling. If only there were a way to bottle this feeling, record it, something to convey this back to his parents at home. Emma and Sarah Beth were late getting to the water's edge, but they arrived on the grassy knoll just in time to catch the second string of Edward's oration. When I arrived in your fine town merely a week ago, I had no idea what obstacles you were facing or what barriers I would face in trying to take my place as your rightful ruler. The crowd began to mumble at that. Some of the people had never seen this man before. Some had never even heard of him. Others still had heard tell of this prince who'd come to Astoria, but most didn't believe that he was their prince, even if they did believe he was a prince. Please, Edward raised a hand to quiet the people, if I could just have one more moment of your time, and then we can all celebrate together. Whether it was his fancy British accent or his princely charm, it didn't really matter. Most of the people talking did quiet down to listen again. In Whitelock, the wishing boats set the aspirations for the remainder of our year. As the sun sets over the harbour here in Astoria, the wishes that you place aboard each tiny boat will float out to sea, and as the moon rises, she'll shine down with all her stars and grant the wishes of only those with the truest hearts and the purest of intentions. Emma was impressed. He had the good sense to use phrasing like our year and truest of hearts to draw people in. Of course, looking like he just rolled off a GQ cover probably swayed people as well, but he was holding their attention if nothing else. In just a moment, we'll place our boats in the water and we'll wish together. But before we do, I'd like to point you all in the direction of a small table on the northeast corner of this very park. The mumbling started again. He held a hand up to stop them once more. Please, just one more moment. Once you've made your wish, consider visiting Miss Emma Prescott at the table in the back. There you can learn about her campaign for city councilwoman in the 3rd District of Astoria. Hey, stay in your lane, came a shout from the back of the crowd. You stay in your lane, another anonymous voice replied to them. Ladies and gentlemen, the fishermen of Astoria's harbor have joined forces with Miss Prescott to offer a ride to the polls for anyone who might find themselves in need on Tuesday of this coming week. Whether you intend to vote for her or not, and I certainly hope you do, a ride will be provided. No questions asked. Back on shore, Emma looked surprised. Prince Edward had taken time away from an event that made a great deal to him to talk to her and about her campaign. Sure, it would also benefit him in the end. She had to remind herself of that as she stood there with a tiny paper boat in her hands. But Emma decided to write her wishes, hopes, and dreams, not just for the year, but the years beyond this one on that piece of paper. And then she looked up how to origami it, and she put it into a boat. With her wish tucked inside it, she joined everyone around in placing their boats into the water. On the count of 3, we push! She was shaken from her daze to hear Edward directing the crowd. Emma had missed whatever instructions came before that. She was all caught up in her head. Come on, Emma. Sarah Beth grabbed her arm and dragged her down to the water. You're not going to make me miss this chance to wish for my own prince. Emma raised an eyebrow at her. I don't think that's how... What do you mean your own prince? Do you think Edward has a brother? She asked in return. Yeah, Emma said, leaning down to place her boat in the water. I think he has 2 brothers, actually. Why do you ask? Because if Edward keeps living here, maybe one of them will come visit, and we can fall in love, and we can live happily ever after, Sarah Beth said as though that were completely obvious. Oh, yeah, of course. Emma tried not to laugh, unable to tell if her friend was serious or not. When the girls looked up from their boats, they could see Edward leaning down in the water from the actual boat he was standing on. He held onto the edge and carefully placed a wooden boat into the water and pushed it away from himself. Emma couldn't help but wonder what wish he might have made. I also don't know. What wish did Edward make? I can't remember. I don't know if I ever even decided. Who's to say? After the wishing boats, Edward. Prince Edward, Sarah Beth called, using her whole arm to wave to him as though he were miles away rather than a few feet from the table they were cleaning up. What an amazing event. She took a moment to applaud, alone, standing right there with Emma and Mikey, who hadn't got the memo to clap. Edward approached and smiled, nodding at her. Thank you so much, Sarah Beth. Did you all get to make your wishes, or were you stuck here at the table the whole time? Wouldn't have missed it for the world, Your Majesty. Mikey patted him on the back. That was a right good speech you gave. Thank you, my good man. Edward opted for a half hug to his first friend of Astoria at this time, wrapping just one arm around the man's shoulders as he asked, "And how did it go here? Did you have lots of sign-ups?" "Well," Mikey scratched at his cheek, "I haven't seen the numbers, but your girls here did get in a minor spat that didn't do much by way of winning them support with the older crowd." Edward sucked air in through his teeth, wincing. "What happened?" Sarah Beth blushed. We may have told them that Keating owns the newspaper and is feeding them lies." Edward tilted his head, confused. "That doesn't sound like a bad thing. Shouldn't they know that?" Mikey moved his hand through the air, encouraging them to continue. Emma chimed in from where she was collapsing the folding table that they used. "SB may or may not have also called them sheeple." "Sheeple? Like, sheep, but people?" Sarah Beth admitted, and Edward whistled. "Ah, yes. I could see how that would go exceedingly well. Yeah, in my experience, people do love to be reminded that they're mindless ruminant mammals. Never mind that, though." How indeed were the sign-ups?" "Not terrible, but not great," Emma answered. She felt like there was no point in sugarcoating the matter. "It looks like the guys will be driving." She reached into the tote bag where she'd placed the papers and looked at the circled number at the top right corner of the front page. "A whopping 15 people to the polls." And then she frowned. It was worse than she even thought. Edward sighed a little, trying to keep it quiet so as not to dishearten them. He stepped over to where Emma stood and brushed a hand along her arm to comfort her. "That's 15 more people than we had this morning, right?" "Doesn't mean they're voting for me just because we're driving them, Edward," Emma reminded him, pulling the bag onto her shoulder and hoisting the large folding table up into her arms with the side handle. "But thanks for trying to make it sound good." "Hey, now." Mikey raised his voice so they'd all look his way. "You kids can't be losing faith already. We barely just started here." "Mikey's right," Edward nodded. 15 sign-ups for rides is fantastic." That was a lie, but what else could he say? "Besides, that doesn't mean you didn't reach people who can drive themselves or already have rides. But, sorry, I may have missed a step here. Did you say that Mayor Keating owns the newspaper in which your article was canned?" Emma nodded. "But partial owner. Sorry, you stepped out to call Mikey when I told SB that part." "Well, there goes my next idea." "No, tell us," Sarah Beth pleaded, her eyes sad from the somber mood that her friends were all in. "Maybe it's a good one. Maybe we could use a good one. Idea." "Well, I was going to suggest that you ask whoever you spoke to at the Post to add something to tomorrow or Monday's paper about our initiative to give historians right to the polls. But if Keating holds the purse strings of the paper, I doubt that—" Emma cut him off. "Actually, that's a great idea." "Emma," Sarah Beth entered as the voice of reason this time. "How is that a great idea when we know anything written will get shot down by Keating and his lemmings? What if it's not something we want written?" Emma posed the question to the group. "I don't rightly follow," Mikey answered after a long pause from him, Sarah Beth, and Prince Edward. "It is something we want, isn't it?" Emma held up both hands, swiping them through the air as if she were placing a marquee. "Royal Rides, Prince Edward's gift to Astoria." "Oh," all three of them replied in unison as she continued. "Edward can contact the paper. He's not only new to them, he's new to Astoria in general. It makes sense that Keating would have told the editors to watch out for me. I've been driving him crazy for months, but Edward isn't even on their radar yet. Plus, it sounds great. What a piece. I bet it get picked up by the Associated Press and everything. Or at least, that's what you should tell them. Newspapers want attention, right? Hey, Ray." "Right," Sarah Beth pointed at her, jumping in with another point. "And no one has even written about Edward being in town yet. None of the papers. How is that possible? I can't imagine any royal showing up in America and not getting paparazzi photos on the cover of a magazine." "We don't exactly have paparazzi here in Astoria," Mikey chuckled. "But I like this. I like where all your heads are at." "What do you say we grab a drink and finish firming up this plan?" Edward asked. "I know a place," Emma smiled. "You kids go on ahead. I gotta get home to my wife and daughter, but you catch me up tomorrow." Mikey waved at the three clear adults that he insisted on calling kids. "Do you think we'll ever grow up in his eyes?" Edward asked with a chuckle. "Nope." Coffee's so good, you guys. I don't know how people who don't drink coffee, Becca, live without it. Are you laughing at me or are you laughing at the story? I'll take either because I'm both, actually. I guess it's one and the same at this point, right? The story. Oh, good. Well, you know what? That's actually better. I appreciate that. The next the next scene is called At the Bar, and this is also from Edward's perspective. I don't know what I was doing here, writing so many scenes from Edward's perspective all in a row. That's really unusual. Usually they went back and forth, so I don't know what I was doing, but I had more sleep than I do now, so it must have been for a reason. What the reason was, I don't remember. When the group fell through the doors of Read Between the Vines, it was busier than either girl had seen it in months, maybe busier than they'd seen it since Emma opened the place 2 years earlier. Read Between the Vines had a steady customer base, but this was standing room only. Edward's perspective was perfect for these, though. I guess so, then maybe there was a reason, right? I don't know. Whoa. Sarah Beth stopped at the doorway, causing Edward and Emma to bump right into her. Oof! Emma recovered from running into her friend and looked around the bustling bar. What the heck? Are we running a special that I don't know about? Edward laughed. Say, that's funny. Emma squinted her eyes, smiling despite herself. She was pretty sure that she wasn't saying anything funny, but she'd give this one. Thanks, but seriously, what is happening here? Rather than wait to find out why the place was packed to the gills, Edward stepped over to a nearby table and politely interrupted. Say, excuse me. He smiled at the couple sharing a cheese board and meat over Monopoly. Is there something special going on here tonight? Huh? The dude asked. Why is the place so packed? Sarah Beth busted in, asking the same question, but in plain English. Oh, the girl half of the couple said and shrugged. I don't know about everyone else, but we were down at the wishing boats, and this was the closest place for a good night out afterward. Huh. Emma looked surprised. Cool. I guess we're drinking in the back then. With an uncorked bottle of wine in hand, Emma walked to the table in the stockroom where Sarah Beth and Edward sat with empty glasses. Okay, so what's the plan? She asked as she poured. Edward perused the menu that he'd grabbed from the front. I think Royal Rides is actually like the cutest name ever. Sarah Beth picked up her now full glass and held it out to the other two to initiate cheers. That should be a rideshare company. She clapped her hands, excited by the sudden prospect. What? Edward laughed. Are you suggesting that I open a rideshare company here in Astoria and use my princely title to bolster its business? He was absolutely following her logic, but it felt ridiculous. Are we allowed to order food from back here? Honestly, Emma licked her lips to catch a fallen drip of wine that she was drinking. It's really not a terrible idea. The city council won't let Uber or Lyft into town, but why shouldn't they approve a small family-owned business that just happens to be run by our very own Prince Edward? Edward rolled his eyes. Small, family-owned. But you'll be at the city council next week anyway, so you can just make them approve it. I wanted you to get them to approve the big ones, but this sounds so much better. Sarah Beth nodded. SB, I won't be the city council. Emma leaned back. I'll just be on the city council. I mean, hopefully I'll be on the city council. And I can't just make them approve stuff. We have to come to an agreement as a group. And I think in this case, it might be easier said than done. Can't we just abolish this ridiculous city council? Edward asked with a sigh. Sarah Beth took a larger sip. Hey, there's an idea. Goodbye to all those old jerks. SB, don't be ageist. Emma laughed and swallowed more of her wine. But we really need Edward to be in power for that anyway. Not just in name, but like in practice too. She looked right at him. Sorry, we got sidetracked. So we're implementing Royal Rides and on Monday morning, I need to call that newspaper man and ask him to print a piece about it. Edward asked. Yep, and hopefully that sways enough votes in my direction. Emma took a large sip at the mention of the election, even though the mention came out of her own mouth. All right then, back to my other question. May I order food because I am absolutely famished? Sorry, Emma nodded, easily distracted. Yes, you can eat. Just go tell the girls working up front to make whatever you want. They'll do it. Or heck, I can make it. It's on the house. What do you want? Edward stood up, shaking his head. Surely you don't expect me to freeload off your establishment. I shall go to the bar and order like a proper patron. I'll pay my way. Suit yourself, Emma shrugged, not wanting this to be the battle she picked with him. Edward returned from the front room a few moments later. I'm truly shocked to find that a bar like yours isn't serving eggnog this time of year. It's a real travesty. We have mulled wine, Sarah Beth replied. No, don't remind me. Edward scratched at his tongue with his teeth, trying to remove the taste it left there. I'm still recovering from the batch you served me the other evening. I don't know if you guys, I'm going to pause for a second. Have any of you ever had homemade mulled wine? It's truly horrific. I had it. Maybe we just did a bad job making it at the bar that I worked at, but like, it made me go, it leaves like the worst feeling on your tongue. You love it? Okay. Then maybe we just made it poorly. I'm willing to admit that we might have just done a bad job, but like we made it when I worked in Astoria, when it was seasonal. Horrific.
Truly horrific. We looked up a recipe online, and I don't know if the recipe was just bad or we just did a bad job. I don't know. I'm willing to admit human error, maybe, but like, blah, 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 blah. It was nasty. We didn't serve it in the end. We were just like, you know what, never mind. An hour later, the group was a bottle deep, scribbling plans on some receipt paper that Sarah Beth had stolen from the register. We're in a bookstore, and you ladies can't find any real bloody paper, Edward said, picking up the receipt and letting it float back down to the table. Oh my God, Sarah Beth threw out the word God extra long. We sell notebooks. That made her chuckle, and she stood up to run and grab one for them to use for the rest of their planning. It does have to be a specific, yeah, it was not any of those things, Jen. It was not specific or well-balanced. Emma and Edward sat in silence for a few seconds, and then, why wait until Monday? Emma asked, leaning on the table between them. Why not call tomorrow? Hell, we should call him now. What time do you think they go to print? Now? Edward looked a little nervous, taking a large gulp of his wine. You want me to call a stranger at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night? I mean, kinda. Yeah. Kinda yeah what? Sarah Beth asked when she returned with an empty notebook. It's a bit odd, but if you think it's the right idea, I'll do it. Do what? Sarah Beth asked, demanding to be included in the conversation that had been bouncing back and forth right in front of her. Emma thinks that I should call the newspaper now and tell them about royal rides early. Edward filled her in. Early? Sarah Beth rolled her eyes. Nothing we're doing this week is early. If anything, we're like 17 years behind what we should have been doing for this campaign. But yeah, I say call. What could it hurt? Worst case, they won't print until Monday anyway, and then you're no worse off than you would have been. We would have been, Emma corrected her. Whatever, we would have been. The wine was definitely starting to hit Sarah Beth. Emma slid her cell phone over to Edward, showing him the phone number. Just don't tell him that you got his number from me, okay? Edward typed the number into his phone and then stood up, pushing his chair back. How the devil am I supposed to have gotten it then? Mikey certainly doesn't know this man. Sarah Beth shrugged, her lips already purpling from the wine. You're a prince. Don't you have access to, like, everything? Edward scoffed, the door handle already in his hand. If that were the case, would we even need this plan? Emma pointed her glass at him, but then looked at her friend. Good point. She nodded. He's got a good point. Where are you going, though? I'm stepping outside to make this call so he doesn't hear the two of you giggling behind me. Seriously, Emma, he is so cute, Sarah Beth said, said out of nowhere as soon as Edward shut the door. What? Emma rolled her eyes. Sarah Beth, you can't seriously be considering throwing yourself at an actual prince. I know you're into all those romance novels and Hallmark movies, but like, oh, no, not for me, you goon. Sarah Beth whacked her friend with the notebook that they had yet to use. For you. He's trying to impress you right now. Impress me how? Hi, Anya. Sarah Beth put on her best British accent, repeating Edward's words from a few moments before. But if you think it's the right idea, I'll do it. That's nothing. He just wants to get Astoria back in the Let's try that again. He just wanted to get Astoria back into the monarchical clutches of his family so they can have our taxes instead of them going to, say, wait a second, where do you think our taxes go anyway? Monarchical? Sarah Beth asked. Is that even a word? Actually, yeah, Emma shrugged. Anyway, the election is my focus. Sure, Jan. Sarah Beth rolled her eyes. All I'm saying is you've been alone for a really long time. The last three words were drawn out, but extremely loud whispers. Geez, rub it in a little harder, why don't you? More things I had to Google. Yeah, I also Googled it, and it is a real word, by the way, but it is extremely difficult to pronounce. But it is a real word. If it weren't, I probably still would have used it and made it into a joke, but it is real. Emma, I'm trying to tell you that this is your chance for a little fun. You can't spend your whole life trying to save the pier, this town, whatever. You're ignoring yourself. Haven't you ever heard of self-care? Sure, I take a bubble bath every now and again, Emma replied, pouring a bit more wine into each of their glasses. No more for me. Sarah Beth poured what made it into her glass over into Emma's. What? You're cutting yourself off? I gotta go home. I am freaking pooped, and I'm opening the bar tomorrow. Sarah Beth began to gather her things. You can't drive until you sobered up. Plus, I know the owner of the bar, Emma said in a sing-songy voice. Come on, stay. We can open late tomorrow. Ew, who are you? We are not opening late tomorrow on my watch. And don't worry, I am not driving drunk. A friend is going to give me a ride. A friend? Emma repeated. What friend? That, Sarah Beth said, slinging her purse over her shoulder, is really none of your business right now. Night, babes. I'll see you tomorrow. And once Emma was alone, she picked up the wine glass, swirling the liquid in it as she thought about what else she could do to sway the election her way. Legally, of course. She was scribbling ideas and then scratching them out, scribbling, scratching, scribbling, scratching over and over and over again when Edward walked back in. What the heck have you... What is... Sorry, wrong voice. Where the heck have you been... Oh, wait a second. What is all that? He was carrying a paper bag with Easy Mart written on the front of it. Did you go grocery shopping? Emma asked, thoroughly confused. Did my food options offend you so much that you had to go to the gas station market for better than we have? What offends me, he huffed, placing the bag on the table in front of her, is the lack of eggnog on your menu at this festive time of year. What kind of cozy bar, what kind of any bar doesn't serve eggnog? Can I be honest with you right now? Emma said, trying her hardest not to laugh, definitely a little wine drunk. Yes, of course. She leaned closer to him and used Sarah Beth's method of a loud whisper to say, I've never had eggnog. Prince Edward looked as though he might faint on the spot. Well, then I guess it's a right good thing that I went and got the supplies for you. He began to remove each item from the bag, setting it in front of her. I intend to make it immediately. Right here? In my stockroom? She asked cheekily. Quite right, Edward nodded. What? No, sorry. No, we need a kitchen. A burner at the very bare minimum. And a refrigerator, of course. Of course, she nodded, pushing back from the table. Come on, kitchen. Once Edward was all set up with a mixing bowl, a pot, and a whisk, Emma positioned herself in a nearby chair and the planning notebook on her lap. Can we get serious for a second? I have never been more serious in my life. Edward was focused on the bowl, into which he was cracking eggs. Ugh, Emma growled quietly. This is important. Don't you want to show your parents that you turned the place around? Yes, but Emma... Edward motioned to the bowl before him, wiping his hands on the cutesy apron that he'd found on a hook and donned for the occasion. I must do this first. She puffed up her cheeks. If I help you do it faster, can we get back to business? He nodded, but it didn't look like he was completely paying attention to her. Yes, but I need this to thicken, and it simply won't. I could have sworn I remembered the recipe, but... Emma stood up and walked over to where Edward was whisking a thin, yellowish-looking liquid. Is it supposed to look like that? Like what? He asked. I don't know, like a banana milkshake? Edward frowned. Yes? No? Maybe? He didn't sound certain. All I know is it smells right, but it isn't thick enough. Oh. Emma shrugged and put the cell phone out of her pocket, typing quickly as she walked back over to where she'd been sitting. This says you can use more heavy cream than milk to thicken eggnog. Yes, 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 of course. And apparently more egg yolks than whites, Emma stated, reopening the notebook where she returned to the list of potential ideas. We could ask Moonbeam Mugs to... No, she shook her head to herself. Or we could talk to Pearl and see if... No, none of these ideas felt right. Emma ripped the page out and tossed it into the trash can, watching crumbled up paper bounce off the rim. Wow, I suck. No, you don't, Edward shook his head. How many more eggs do you think... Egg yolks, Emma corrected him as she saw him crack the entire egg, the white of it dripping off his fingers and into the bowl. He looked down at the superfluous egg white with an adorable frown that made Emma's stomach do somersaults against her will. Egg yolk, you said? She nodded. Yeah, just the yolk to thicken it. I suppose it's too late now, he frowned. And Emma stood up and walked over to the bowl before gently touching his arms. Seriously, don't stress about it. It's gonna be great. What if it's not great? Edward said, picking it up to transfer the liquid into the pot that he had sitting on the stove. Well, Emma smushed her lips to one side of her face. Since I've never had eggnog before, I won't know the difference. Wow, Edward stirred, waiting for the simmer. Thank you, Emma, for the vote of confidence here. Oh, come on. She pushed his arm a little. Will you lighten up? I am extremely light. Thank you very much. I'm practically Edison. Now, I just need to let this simmer and thicken, then we'll put it in the fridge for a few hours and voila. Emma narrowed her eyes at him. Are you telling me you went all the way to Easy Mart and we don't even get to drink this stuff right now? Edward shrugged, wiping his hands on the apron again. I don't make the rules. I just follow the recipe. I'm getting another snack, Emma grumbled, moving toward the door that led back to the bar area. Wait! Edward pulled the scalloped edge apron off himself and hung it back up. I'll come with you. The bar area was nearly empty when the two of them emerged from the kitchen. The two part-time workers that Emma had mentioned earlier were beginning to clean up as the last two tables of guests finished their wine and had already started putting away their games. Do you want another drink? Emma asked Edward, pulling an open bottle from behind the bar. Place is a lot quieter here without all those people. Captain Obvious over here, Emma laughed, pouring each of them a glass. How's it going? She asked Bree. Bree looked around with a shrug. Not too bad. We're almost done here. Are you gonna lock up or are you heading out now? Nah, we got something finished cooking in the back and then, Oh, fuck! Edward rushed off of the bar stool that he'd plopped onto and ran back to the kitchen with Emma on his heels. When they got to the stove, the eggnog definitely looked different. Listen, I am no expert, Emma's voice trailed off. I've made scrambled eggs, haven't I? Sad. Poor Edward. If you're not careful, that can happen with eggnog. I speak from experience because most of that story happened with my husband and I when he found out that I had never had eggnog before. The first batch did look like scrambled eggs, I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh my gosh, it's eggs. Poor guy, he tried so hard. He actually makes great eggnog. It was just, it's hard when you can't have sugar. He was using substitutes and things like that, and it all went awry. So somebody, I think it was Nikki, asked, hey Amber, Nikki asked early on if there were any like inside jokes that I added into it, and the eggnog thing was definitely an inside joke because that definitely happened to us in real life. Not exactly like that, but pretty close. Chapter 16. Oh, we're in a new chapter finally. Wow, we get Emma again. Hooray. Cleaning up the wishing boats. Emma, oh, this is funny too. This actually made me laugh when I figured this part out. I felt very clever. Hey, how are you, Amber? Cleaning up the wishing boats. Emma. I woke up the next morning to my head pounding. No, wait, that wasn't my head. That was the door. Someone was pounding on the door. I squinted one eye open, mentally begging the noise to stop. When I pushed myself up to a seated position, everything started to rush back to me. I wasn't in my bed. I wasn't even in a bed. I was still at the bar, asleep on a couch. And as the banging continued, the events of the night before returned to the forefront of my memory. But what didn't was an explanation for how I'd fallen asleep on someone. And when I finally convinced both eyes to open and come into focus, I was sleeping on Edward with a drooling face pressed against the arm of the sofa. Oh, God. Hey, Jamantha. Okay, it was my head pounding. How much did we actually drink? What did we do beyond planning for the coming week and make eggnog? Miss Prescott, a loud voice accompanied more banging on the front door. If you don't open the door, we're gonna have to come. I'm coming, I yelled back despite the pain that had caused my head. Shit, I mumbled, tripping over a coat that had apparently been our blanket last night, and I made my way to the door. Edward, for his part, was still sound asleep, which is exactly what the sheriff saw when he stepped through the door and opened it. After I opened it, sorry. How on earth did that man sleep through all of this? Took you long enough, Deputy Williams mumbled as he stepped behind Sheriff Thatcher. How much of that had I slept through? I swallowed hard, keeping down whatever was threatening to resurface from the night before. The last thing I needed was to throw up on the sheriff's shoes 2 days before my hopeful appointment to the city council. Not a great start. Ma'am, we're actually here for him, the sheriff motioned to Edward, who was still asleep, softly snoring away. Is something wrong? I narrowed my eyes, holding my temples with my fingers as though that would somehow keep the brains inside my head. Sure is. That man is a public menace, the deputy said loud enough to force me to close my eyes again, wincing. I would have laughed if I hadn't been in so much pain. I'm sorry. Him? I pointed at the drooling dignitary. Is this a prank, or is this some false report by Mayor Keating? Afraid not, Sheriff Thatcher said. Seems this young man here held an event yesterday, and we received multiple calls this morning reporting that none of his, he looked down at the paper in his hand, boats were cleaned up. Edward was barely starting to shift on the couch. My apologies, officer, but I'm really not following you. I was regretting the amount of alcohol I had consumed the night before. What the sheriff is trying to say, his deputy stepped in front of him, is that your boyfriend here decided to tell hundreds of people to put boats in the water and didn't rightly clean up a lick of it. The whole coastline is covered with paper, plastic, little wooden boats. It's a mess. I felt like my mind was out to sea, my brain sloshing around in my skull. I see. And at that moment, the deputy opted to walk over to where Edward was curled up on the couch and kicked his shoe. Wakey, wakey, eggs and bakey. Edward twitched, breathing deeply as he opened one eye and looked around at us like a disheveled cyclops. Huh? He turned over onto his back now as he looked up at the ceiling. "My head is full of wool," he mumbled, pressing the back of his hand against his mouth. "Edward," I stepped toward him, my voice quieter for both of our sakes. "The sheriff and his deputy are here. They said that you left everything after the event. The boats?" It took Edward a full minute to bring himself to an upright seated position, now with 2 fully working eyes. "I don't understand. The boats are for wishes." The sheriff crossed his arms over his chest, stepping forward, his steel-toed boots making loud steps against the wooden floor. "Son, are you admitting to be in violation of the city preservation ordinance?" Looking baffled by the string of words that just came out of the sheriff's mouth, Edward shrugged. "Sir, I have no idea what any of that even means." "The event you held," the deputy said. "People brought trash. You left your event. You didn't clean a damn thing up. How much simpler can we make this for you?" Edward hung slack-jawed. "You have to clean up the wishing boats?" Cleaning up the wishing boats. Edward. "Hey, Libby, how are you?" So, this is another thing that I always find interesting in like books and movies like this. They talk about these big events and like someone puts on these big things, but then like they never show you like what happens after. They're like, "Oh, we released these lanterns into the sky. Goodbye, lanterns," as if like it's not pollution. Yes, the people who organize the event have to clean things up. The prince did not know that. I looked up the city ordinances for Oregon, and there are rules, and you can be fined a lot. Not that he doesn't have the money, but like it's bad, you know? Anyway. Edward felt stupider than ever. Apparently, every year after people left for home, an event crew that was paid for by the royal family came along and cleaned up after them. "I feel like a complete and utter plank." Edward frowned at Emma, reaching his hand into the freezing water to grab yet another boat. "Honestly, they should make special gloves for this kind of business." Emma did the same thing, gathering a wayward paper boat from the shoreline and shoving it into an industrial-sized trash bag. They probably do make gloves for this. All morning, she'd gone back and forth between thinking that Edward should have known better and wanting to give him the benefit of the doubt. Would she have thought of it? Maybe, but now wasn't the time to point fingers. It's not like he did this on purpose. "Hey, look," she shrugged. "It was an honest mistake, right? It's not like you were littering on purpose." But as she looked around them, there was so much more to do. When the sheriff explained the consequences of his actions, Edward was more than happy to pay the multiple $1,000 fine that he would incur for unlawful littering in a public body of water. But still, it was the threat of a misdemeanor that got him up off the couch. Whether he paid the fine or not, without a team in place to clean the mess up before Monday morning, the sheriff would have to cite him. And that's true. Like I said, I looked it up. "Thank heavens for Mikey," Edward said as he wistfully looked out at the water where all the fishermen who volunteered to drive the seniors to the pools on Tuesday were also giving up their Sunday to help clean up the harbor. Maybe, but we'll find the prince. Yeah, exactly. Oh, maybe we will find the prince's wishing boat. What a cute idea. I wish I would have thought of that, Mary. Oh, I do wish that Emma had found his boat. That would have been cute. What a great idea. That should be like a hidden scene that I forgot. We'll write it later. "Certainly they wouldn't have done this for me." "You are our leader," Emma offered. "Hardly." Edward rolled his eyes. "As of yet, I've done nothing positive for the people of Astoria." Hey! Emma moved closer to where he was cleaning. "That's not true. You've definitely improved morale." "Morale doesn't put food on the table of ordinary citizens," he said. "That's a quote from a former White Lockian prime minister, and even though my father was no fan of his, he is right when you think about it." "Well, yeah." Emma couldn't argue. "But you're gonna do more. You've got great plans. I mean," she paused, looking at Edward with pleading eyes. You do have great plans, right? You're not gonna fix things here you are gonna fix things here after we find those documents, right?" Edward simply nodded, not sure what else to say. He didn't have a plan, actually. He didn't even know what Astoria needed or what he could do about it. He'd heard from Mikey that unemployment was high. He'd heard Emma rant about the pier that her father worked on falling apart, but what could he do for either of those issues other than throw money at them? Then he'd be no better off than he was now, paying a fine and still picking up trash. Yeah. A pause hung in the air as they stared at one another. "I mean, I don't know," he admitted. "What?" Emma furrowed her brow. "What do you mean you don't know?" I don't know anything, Emma. I'm drowning in this mess of rubbish. He dropped the bag of boats onto the floor. I've been screwed up my whole life, and if I stood here and told you that I came to Astoria with a plan beyond take over and impress my parents with the princely charm that won you all over, then I would be lying. So, Emma shrugged, can't you plan now? You still have time. I haven't even won the election yet. And when you do, where does that leave me? Primed to take over when we find those papers and show everyone who the rightful ruler of Astoria is? Was Emma's response to his woe is me attitude. Hey, buck up! She punched him in the shoulder a little harder than she intended. Ow! Edward scrunched his face. What was that for? That was to snap you out of your pity party. Edward pulled his head back, an offended look on his face. Pity party? I'm just wallowing in self-pity over your situation. She finished his sentence without an invitation to do so. But that's not what a prince does. We're going to win this election on Tuesday, and we're going to find those papers, and in the meantime, you're going to come up with a plan to save Astoria. Oh, really? Yeah, really. And how do you propose I do that? Emma looked around, unsure. She didn't have any more ideas than he had, but she wasn't going to fall into the same lamentations. Edward, she grabbed his face in her hands, forcing him to look directly at her. You gotta perk up. There are plenty of ways to formulate a plan, and it all starts with you figuring out if you want to do it. Do you want to help Astoria? She let the question hang in the air as her hands fell from his face. He didn't know what to say at first. Did he? Yes, I do, he answered, not really knowing if it was truly in his heart or not. Okay then, she smiled back at him. Then we'll get you out there to meet the people. You'll win them over while finding out what they really need, not just smiling for photo ops at a cafe. I'll find the missing papers. You'll work with the people of Astoria to improve infrastructure. We'll rebuild and everything will be great. Aw, she's really trying. Poor Emma. Chapter 17, The Hangover, Emma. The greasiest toast, 2 eggs, and bacon, I told Maureen from our table at Moonbeam Mugs. There was no way that we were going back to the bar to relive the scene of our hangovers after cleaning up the wishing boats. Not a lick of food was in our stomach, and we were, in a word, hangry. Yes, I'll have the same, Edward smiled at Mikey's wife, handing her the menu. No herring this morning, Your Majesty? Even though it had been many hours and a few dozen Advil since we woke up, the mention of fish made us both a little green. No, thank you, Lady Donnelly. He shook his head. The breakfast Emma chose will be smashing. Once she walked away, I pretended to stick a finger down my throat, mocking gag. How did you ever eat herring for breakfast? Can we please change the subject before I chunder? Chunder? I asked, covering my mouth with a hand. Even that word sounds disgusting. Change of subject, he reiterated, sipping on a cup of tea, and I went for my second cup of coffee today. When the food came, we dug right in like animals who had never seen a meal. I could literally lick the butter off this toast. I am so hungry. I stared lovingly at the sourdough in front of me. Edward, though hungry, was a bit more proper, looking over at me like I had no manners whatsoever. Emma, please do not lick your toast in public, he added with a wry smile. Oh, of course, Your Highness. I rolled my eyes at him, taking a bite of the buttery bread corner. This is divine. He started by dipping his bread into the yolky goodness before him. So, he said a few moments later, dabbing at his lips with a paper napkin available to us, how do you propose I go out and meet the people, as you said? Is there a gathering spot where I might find most of them? I'd never heard that word chunder. It's almost I know, it's a horrific word, right? So I did look up a lot of British slang to try to make it feel a little bit more authentic when he spoke. I know he's not really British, but like, you know, I didn't want to make up words, so I looked up what they would say in these situations, and I think it does make it feel a little more authentic. I don't know. Maybe. You guys can tell me if it does. But chunder's a horrific word. It's, like, truly disgusting. Yeah. I licked the crunchy fallen bacon bits off my lips and shrugged. I don't know, you could do the classic local government thing in Canvas. Your local government makes paintings for people. What? I asked, my mouth half full of eggy bread. No, canvassing is like going door to door and talking to the people. For example, when I did it, I had to go around my district, knock on doors and say like, hey, I'm Emma Prescott and I'm running for city council in the seat of the district, 3rd district, blah, 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 blah. You've heard the word, you know the song in the land down. Oh, they say it in there? I didn't even realize that. My brain didn't even put that together. That's funny. Blah, 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 he nodded. Yes, extremely compelling. So, should I start there also? I waved a slice of bacon at him. Come on, you know what I mean. You just go up to the people and you say, Hi, I'm your Prince Edward and I'd like your support. Edward pressed his hands together in a prayer position, looking me dead in the eyes. Emma, I have no idea what your middle name is, Prescott. Are you literally suggesting that I, the Prince of Whitelock, knock on people's doors and introduce myself out of the blue? It's Jean. And yes. Okay, this is really funny. I just realized because I'm reading this on Kindle, I can see what people have highlighted. And apparently 3 people have highlighted that section. Like the part where, I don't know why, but 3 people have highlighted that. Apparently people thought it was funny. That's really great. How cute. I come from a land down under. Oh, wow. I never even put that together, Jillian. That's really funny. Okay, so for any of you who have not read my book yet, we're about to get to a character that people absolutely adore. When I wrote this, I had no idea this was going to happen, but everyone that I know who's like a friend of mine that reads this would text me when they get to this one character, and they're like, I would die for her. Like, I don't know what it is about this character, but people just fall in love with her. And I've actually had people ask me to write her story, which I think is really cute. I don't know if I could. I've thought about it. Maybe I will one day. But like, people love her for some reason. They like ride at dawn over this character. And I won't say any more, but if you've read it, maybe you feel the same. Quick poll. Quick poll really quick. Raise your hand if you have read this book before, and let me know if you have a favorite character. If you have. I just realized your hair matches your... Oh yeah, it does. Oh my gosh, that's really funny. You wouldn't even see that I have more hair there if you didn't know. I would love to know people's favorite characters. That would like tickle me pink to know who people like. Because everyone feels differently, of course, except this one character that everyone seems to love. Like, even my like straight male friends that read it because they just love me and they wanted to support me, they're like, I like her. And I'm like, okay, her, okay, go for it. But yeah, that's it showed up in reviews a lot. This upcoming character who we will all meet shortly. I only managed to read the beginning. Well, now you're reading more. Do you have a favorite character from what we've read aloud so far? Some people really love Sarah Beth. I've also had a lot of people ask me to write Sarah Beth's story as like a side piece as well, like to write like whatever happens to her after this, you know? So that's also a request that I've had, which I never thought of. This was always meant to be a standalone novel, but like, it's funny that people like some of the characters enough to ask for continuations, if you will. Okay, so Monday morning canvassing from Edward's perspective. On Monday morning, Edward, dressed in his business best, nice slacks, a button-down shirt, and a sport coat, of course, with an umbrella. Well, it wasn't raining yet, but he wasn't going to risk it. Downstairs, he partook in what the hotel called a complimentary continental breakfast. He understood the complimentary part, but the continental part left something to be desired. He happily would have paid to have something a touch more edible. Still, he got down what he could and waited for Mikey to pick him up at what he and Emma referred to as a reasonable time. This confused Edward. For days on end, Emma and Mikey had been forcing him out of bed at 8 a.m. and telling him that that was completely normal. And yet here they were telling him that he could not go canvassing before 10 a.m. What gives? Okay, so I referred to SB as secret boyfriend, and I thought that's why her initials were SB. That's really funny. Her name's just Sarah Beth. So that's just, you know, I don't know. Edward, umbrellas at the coast. I mean, you know, it's so rainy. It's so rainy. Your Majesty, Mikey had told him the afternoon before, rubbing his back slightly as if he were explaining this to a baby rather than a full-grown man. You can't knock on people's doors that early. It just ain't done. Fine. So there he was, up too early, done with breakfast and stuck waiting for his ride. Waiting in the lobby was, in a word, boring. There were a few people milling about, a woman behind the counter answering phones whenever it rang, and oh, newspapers. He approached the stack on the counter. May I purchase a copy? He asked the concierge. No, they're on the house. He returned to his uncomfortable lobby seat and flipped through, trying to find a piece about royal rides. After a lifetime of being splashed in color on the front cover of many a magazine, Edward was shocked to find that his article today was barely a footnote. A story a mere few paragraphs long buried in the politics section of the paper. And then his phone rang, and Mikey's name appeared on the screen. Morning, old chap. Right outside, Your Majesty, Mikey said with a tone that gave away the smile that was no doubt plastered on the man's face, as per usual. Come on out to the truck whenever it is you're ready. Edward, never more ready to leave a place than he was to get out of this lobby, stood up, took the copy of the newspaper in hand, and headed for the door. I'm on my way. This is going to be just awesome, Your Highness. Mikey smiled over at the prince once he was buckled in, and he began to drive. The people of Astoria are going to love you. I mean, they already love you, but once they hear what's going on, well, things are really going to turn around for us. I do certainly hope so. The neighborhood Mikey dropped Edward off in was one that he'd never seen before. It looked like something out of a film. A tree-lined street with houses that ranged from well-kept mid-century homes to completely dilapidated shacks. Unsure of where to start, Edward forced himself to stand tall and walk to the corner home with a welcome sign on the front door. Well, that seemed promising. With as much courage as he could muster, Edward walked up the 3 small steps and knocked on the door. And he stood there waiting. And waiting. Nothing. He rubbed his hands together and looked around, waiting a few moments longer. Was this some kind of bloody prank? No one showed up to open the door. Blast. He mumbled to himself and walked back down the tiny steps that he'd climbed up moments before. On to the next home. When he reached the next house, he could see that at least the light was on inside. Well, this was a more promising start. He knocked, same as before, and waited. And a few moments later, a middle-aged woman cracked open the door. Yeah, she asked, sounding cranky. Yes, hello. Edward offered her a broad smile and a wave. Hello, yes, I am Edward, Prince Edward Grafton Windermere, the 3rd Duke of Finsgate and acting sovereign of this land. I've come to discuss your concerns for Astoria and the failing local slam. Without warning, the door was shut hard in his face. Edward blinked at it, stunned. Oh, he mumbled to himself. Well, that was a surprise, he said aloud to no one but himself. The only time in his life that he'd ever had doors shut in his face were fights with his siblings or jilted lovers. This was new, but there was no time to waste, so he was on to the next. When the door opened at the next home, it was a boy. He couldn't have been more than 10, with large headphones over his ears and a video game controller in his hands. Oh, hello, young chap, Edward greeted him. Might your parents be home? The kid stared at him for a second and then pressed the button on the video game controller, speaking into it. Hang on a second, there's some weirdo at the door. What? No, I assure you, I am not some weirdo. I am Prince Edward Grafton Windermere, the 3rd Duke of Finsgate and acting... He stopped himself, realizing that this probably wasn't helping his case. Sorry, but is there an adult in the home? Mom's at work till 7, the kid mumbled, and I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Righto, Edward pointed at him. Good on you for that one. Stay safe there, lad. And then he was off again. The last thing he needed was for the sheriff to show up because he'd made the wrong impression in this situation. The whole morning felt like a bust. Door after door slammed in his face. One man nearly drew a shotgun on him. That was the shock of his life. And now it was raining. Great. Just what he needed on top of his brush with death. Wet socks. As he rounded the corner to the next neighborhood, he saw a house with a covered porch. Despite having no faith that the interaction with its owner would improve, Edward thought stepping in out of the rain would be nice, even if it was only long enough to have another humbling experience. Raising his hand to the door, he paused for a second, wanting to enjoy not being pelted with the rain for just a moment longer. The door opened before he could bring his fist down to actually knock, and Edward gasped, jumping back when a white-haired, grandmotherly-looking lady greeted him. Hello? She asked loudly. Hello? Edward straightened himself, trying not to look as terrified as he had been. Can I help you? She sounded like she was yelling. Oh, yes, well, no. He stood up straight and widened his smile. It is I who am here to help you. Are you here to clean the chimney? She asked. What? No, I am Prince Edward Grafton Windermere, the 3rd Duke of Finsgate, and I've come to speak to the people of Astoria to see how I might be of service to those who inhabit this land of which I am acting sovereign. Speak up, young man, she squinted as though that would help her ear. You're Phineas of Astoria? Duke of Finsgate, he corrected. Sounds familiar, she nodded. Why are you so wet? Edward looked down at himself. He didn't think that he looked that wet, but he could feel a slosh in his socks and the drips coming down his hair onto his cheek. I suppose the rain did that. He motioned to the downpour behind him, just past her porch. You better come in and dry off. The woman stepped to the side to make room for him to come in. Not sure if this was the right idea, Edward paused for a moment. Could he really just enter the house of a strange old woman? Would she shoot him? Would she poison him to take the crown? Call the police? A string of awful situations flew through Edward's mind, but it all stopped when she loudly said, Come on, I'll make you a cup of tea. She will make him a cup of tea, which is his weakness, as we all know. Edward loves tea. Like any good Brit, even though he's not British. She's pretty sweet. All right, we got to do our advent calendar. Glad I didn't forget today. Dun, 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 dun. Advent calendar. What are we gonna get today? I love these little books. I'm gonna like get something to display them in my office. It's gonna be really cute. Today's the 17th. Let's see what we're gonna get. They're harder to open than you would imagine when you don't have any nails. Oh, The Prince and the Pauper. Speaking of princes, let's get our magnifying glass out. Have you ever thought about a book about Emma's mom? I hadn't, but it's not a bad idea, right? Because she's kind of cool too. An interesting lady. One moment, please. The Birth of the Prince and the Pauper. Okay, hold on. Maybe if I double up, like glasses and this, I'll be able to read it better. In the ancient city of London, a certain autumn day in the second quarter of the 16th century, a boy was born to a poor family named Canty, who did not want him. So sad. On the same day, another English child was born to a rich family who wanted, a rich family of the name of Tudor. Can they use that? With everything she was finding out before she passed, it would be a good read. Yeah, it would be a good read. I never thought about that. Can they say Tudor? And who did want him. All of England wanted him and prayed to God for him, that now he was here, it was really a holiday, and high and low, rich and poor, feared and something, danced and sang for days. Wow. The more you know. They danced and sang for days when that kid was born. Probably because he's a prince. That makes sense. Speaking of princes. All right. Well, we got a lot of reading done today. I hope my daughter's napping. I'll find out shortly. What else is going on? Blah. We'll read more tomorrow, of course. I hope you guys are enjoying this read. That's kind of it for today. I will see you all on the morrow. I hope you have a great rest of your day, guys. Guys, it's almost Christmas.